What were the historical factors that led to the Rwandan genocide, and how did they contribute to the violence and destruction that occurred? The Rwandan genocide was the culmination of a long history of ethnic tensions and political conflict in Rwanda. The main historical factors that led to the genocide include: 1. Colonialism. Rwanda was colonized by Belgium in the early 20th century, and the Belgians reinforced existing ethnic divisions between the Hutu and Tutsi groups, which had been historically fluid and overlapping. The Belgians favored the Tutsi minority and gave them more opportunities for education and political power, which created resentment among the Hutu majority. 2. Independence and political instability. After gaining independence in 1962, Rwanda experienced a series of coups and political upheavals, which further exacerbated tensions between the Hutu and Tutsi. The Hutu gained power in 1973, but this led to widespread human rights abuses and discrimination against the Tutsi minority. 3. Propaganda and hate speech. In the lead-up to the genocide, extremist Hutu politicians and media outlets disseminated propaganda and hate speech against the Tutsi, portraying them as a threat to Hutu power and encouraging violence against them. 4. Assassination of President Habyarimana. In 1994, the assassination of Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu, triggered widespread violence and genocide against the Tutsi and moderate Hutu. Hutu extremists blamed the Tutsi for the assassination and began targeting them for mass killings. 5. Lack of international intervention. Despite early warning signs of the genocide, including the assassination of UN peacekeepers, the international community failed to intervene to stop the violence. This allowed the genocide to continue for several months, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 800,000 people. Overall, the historical factors that led to the Rwandan genocide were rooted in a long history of ethnic tensions, political instability, and discrimination, which were exacerbated by propaganda, hate speech, and lack of international intervention. These factors contributed to the violence and destruction that occurred, resulting in one of the worst atrocities of the 20th century. How did the international community respond to the Rwandan genocide, and what could they have done differently to prevent the atrocities from occurring? The international community's response to the Rwandan genocide has been widely criticized for being inadequate and ineffective in preventing the atrocities from occurring. Here are some key aspects of the international community's response and what could have been done differently. 1. UN Peacekeeping Mission. The United Nations had a peacekeeping mission in Rwanda before and during the genocide, but it was understaffed, under-resourced, and lacked a clear mandate to intervene in the conflict. The UN troops were not authorized to use force to protect civilians, and their requests for reinforcements and stronger rules of engagement were ignored. If the UN had taken stronger action to protect civilians, the death toll may have been lower. 2. International response. The international community, including the United States and European nations, was slow to respond to the genocide and failed to provide the necessary support and resources to stop the violence. There was a lack of political will to intervene in the conflict, and the global media did not provide sufficient coverage of the events, which contributed to a lack of public pressure for action. 3. Arming of perpetrators. Some countries, including France and Belgium, continued to provide military and economic support to the Rwandan government and armed forces, despite evidence that they were involved in the genocide. This support may have prolonged the conflict and contributed to the atrocities. 4. Failure to recognize the genocide. Some countries, including the United States, refused to use the term genocide to describe the events in Rwanda, which may have hindered efforts to mobilize international support for intervention and protection of civilians. In hindsight, there were several steps that the international community could have taken to prevent or mitigate the impact of the Rwandan genocide. These could have included: 1. Early warning. The international community could have taken early warning signs of the genocide more seriously and acted on them quickly to prevent the escalation of violence. 2. Stronger UN mandate. The UN could have provided a stronger mandate to its peacekeeping mission in Rwanda, allowing them to use force to protect civilians. 3. Intervention by regional actors, African nations and regional organizations could have taken a more active role in resolving the conflict, potentially leading to a more effective response. 4. Diplomatic and economic pressure. The international community could have used diplomatic and economic pressure to push for an end to the violence and accountability for those responsible. 5. Increased media coverage. The global media could have provided more comprehensive and accurate coverage of the events in Rwanda, helping to raise awareness and public pressure for action. Overall, the international community's response to the Rwandan genocide was inadequate and failed to prevent the atrocities from occurring. There were several missed opportunities for intervention and protection of civilians, and greater attention and action could have saved many lives. What were the roles of different groups, such as the government, military, and civilians, in the Rwandan genocide, and how did their actions impact the course of the conflict? The Rwandan genocide involved the participation and actions of different groups, each of which played a role in the course of the conflict. Here are some key groups and their actions. 1. Government. The Rwandan government at the time was led by Hutu extremists who fueled ethnic hatred and propaganda against the Tutsi minority. The government implemented policies of discrimination against the Tutsi and authorized the use of violence and genocide to eliminate them. Government officials and politicians played an active role in organizing and carrying out the genocide, and many have been held accountable for their crimes. 2. Military. The Rwandan military was heavily involved in the genocide, with soldiers and officers carrying out attacks on Tutsi communities and participating in mass killings. The military also trained and armed Hutu militia groups, who carried out many of the killings. Some military leaders, such as Colonel Theonest Bagasora, played a key role in planning and executing the genocide. 3. Militia groups. Hutu militia groups, such as the Interahamwe and Impuzamugambi, were responsible for much of the violence and killing during the genocide. These groups were trained and armed by the government and military and carried out attacks on Tutsi communities and moderate Hutu who opposed the genocide. 4. Civilians. Many civilians, including Hutu and Tutsi, were involved in the genocide, either as perpetrators or victims. Some Hutu civilians participated in the killings, either out of fear, pressure, or ideological support for the genocide. Many Tutsi civilians were targeted for violence and killing, and some also took part in acts of self-defense. 5. International community. The international community, including the United Nations and foreign governments, played a role in the conflict through their support or lack of intervention. Some countries, such as France and Belgium, provided military and economic support to the Rwandan government and armed forces, despite evidence of their involvement in the genocide. The United Nations had a peacekeeping mission in Rwanda, but it was understaffed and lacked a clear mandate to intervene. Overall, the roles of different groups in the Rwandan genocide were complex and multifaceted, with each group contributing to the violence and destruction in different ways. The actions of the government, military, and militia groups were particularly significant in carrying out the genocide, while the role of civilians and the international community was more varied and nuanced. How did survivors of the Rwandan genocide cope with the trauma and loss they experienced, and what kind of support and resources were available to help them rebuild their lives? The survivors of the Rwandan genocide faced profound trauma and loss, with many experiencing the loss of family members, homes, and communities. Coping with the aftermath of the genocide was a significant challenge for survivors, but they were able to draw on their resilience, the support of their communities, and the help of various organizations and resources to rebuild their lives. Here are some ways in which survivors coped with the trauma and loss of the genocide. 1. Community support. Survivors often turn to their communities for support and healing, participating in communal mourning and remembrance ceremonies, and seeking comfort and solidarity from others who had experienced similar losses. 2. Therapy and counseling. Many survivors received therapy and counseling services from mental health professionals, which helped them to process their grief and trauma and develop coping strategies for dealing with the ongoing effects of the genocide. 3. Economic and social programs. Organizations such as the International Rescue Committee, UNICEF, and the Red Cross provided various economic and social programs to assist survivors in rebuilding their lives, including education and vocational training, access to health care, and microfinance programs. 4. Advocacy and justice. Some survivors became advocates for justice and accountability, pushing for the prosecution of those responsible for the genocide and working to ensure that the memory of the genocide is preserved and shared with future generations. 5. Faith and spirituality. For many survivors, faith and spirituality provided a source of comfort and meaning, helping them to find hope and resilience in the face of their losses. Despite the challenges of coping with the trauma and loss of the genocide, many survivors have been able to rebuild their lives and find meaning and purpose in the aftermath of the conflict. The support and resources provided by communities and organizations have played a critical role in this process, allowing survivors to heal, recover, and move forward with their lives. What lessons can we learn from the Rwandan genocide, and how can we use this knowledge to prevent similar atrocities from occurring in the future? The Rwandan genocide is a tragic and important event in history that has many lessons to offer for preventing similar atrocities from occurring in the future. Here are some key lessons that we can learn. 1. The danger of ethnic and tribal divisions. The genocide in Rwanda was fueled by long-standing ethnic divisions between the Hutu and Tutsi groups, which were exacerbated by political and economic factors. This highlights the danger of allowing ethnic or tribal divisions to fester and escalate into violence. 2. The importance of early intervention. The international community failed to intervene in the Rwandan genocide in a timely and effective manner, allowing the violence to escalate and spread. This underscores the importance of early intervention in preventing violence and protecting vulnerable populations. 3. The power of propaganda and hate speech. What is the legacy of the Rwandan genocide in Rwanda and around the world, and how has it shaped our understanding of conflict, violence, and genocide? The Rwandan genocide has had a profound and lasting impact on Rwanda and the world, shaping our understanding of conflict, violence, and genocide in important ways. Here are some aspects of the genocide's legacy. 1. Impact on Rwanda. The Rwandan genocide left an indelible mark on the country, with hundreds of thousands of people killed and many more traumatized by the violence. The country has since worked to rebuild and heal, with efforts focused on promoting reconciliation, justice, and social cohesion. 2. Awareness of genocide and mass atrocities. The Rwandan genocide brought international attention to the issue of genocide and mass atrocities, raising awareness of the devastating impact of these crimes and the need for stronger international action to prevent them. 3. Lessons for conflict prevention and resolution. The genocide also offers important lessons for conflict prevention and resolution, highlighting the importance of early warning, intervention, and prevention of violence. The need to address root causes of conflict, build strong institutions, and promote social cohesion has also been emphasized. 4. Advancement of international law. The genocide led to significant developments in international law, including the establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and the inclusion of genocide as a crime under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. 5. Memorialization and remembrance. The genocide has also led to a focus on memorialization and remembrance, with efforts to honor the memory of those who were killed and to promote understanding and awareness of the genocide. Some text goes here. How has Rwanda transformed itself in the aftermath of the genocide, and what efforts have been made to promote reconciliation, justice, and healing in the country? Some text goes here. Rwanda has undergone a remarkable transformation in the aftermath of the genocide, with efforts focused on promoting reconciliation, justice, and healing in the country. Here are some key aspects of this transformation. 1. Reconciliation. Rwanda has implemented a range of policies and programs aimed at promoting reconciliation between Hutu and Tutsi communities. These have included community-based reconciliation initiatives, such as the Gekaka courts, which were established to provide a forum for truth-telling, confession, and forgiveness. 2. Justice. Rwanda has also made significant efforts to hold those responsible for the genocide accountable for their crimes. This has included the establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which prosecuted some of the key architects of the genocide, as well as the use of traditional community-based justice mechanisms, such as the Gekaka courts. 3. Economic development. Rwanda has pursued a strategy of economic development and modernization in the aftermath of the genocide, with a focus on promoting private sector growth and attracting foreign investment. This has helped to create jobs and economic opportunities, and has contributed to Rwanda's emergence as a regional economic hub. 4. Social cohesion. Rwanda has also emphasized the importance of promoting social cohesion and unity in the aftermath of the genocide. This has included efforts to promote a shared national identity and a sense of common purpose, as well as initiatives aimed at promoting gender equality and empowering marginalized communities. 5. Memory and remembrance. Finally, Rwanda has placed a strong emphasis on memory and remembrance, with efforts to preserve the memory of those who were killed in the genocide and to promote understanding and awareness of the genocide among younger generations. How have artistic and cultural expressions, such as literature, film, and music, helped to shed light on the Rwandan genocide and its impact on survivors and communities? Artistic and cultural expressions, such as literature, film, and music, have played a powerful role in shedding light on the Rwandan genocide and its impact on survivors and communities. Here are some ways in which artistic and cultural expressions have contributed to our understanding of the genocide. 1. Memoirs and literature. Many survivors and witnesses of the genocide have written memoirs and other works of literature, sharing their personal experiences and offering insights into the social, political, and cultural factors that contributed to the conflict. These works have helped to shed light on the human toll of the genocide and the lasting impact it has had on individuals and communities. 2. Documentary and narrative film. Films such as Hotel Rwanda, Shooting Dogs, and Sometimes in April have brought the Rwandan genocide to a wider audience, providing vivid depictions of the violence and its impact on survivors. These films have helped to raise awareness of the genocide and its ongoing impact on Rwanda and the world. 3. Visual art. Visual artists have used their work to explore the themes of memory, trauma, and healing in the aftermath of the genocide. Examples include Rwandan artist Odette Carrier's installation Rwanda, Les Signes du Destin, which uses everyday objects to evoke the memory of the genocide, and the work of sculptor Carl Wilkins, who has created memorial sculptures in memory of the victims of the genocide. 4. Music and performance. Musicians and performers have used their art to bear witness to the genocide and to promote healing and reconciliation in its aftermath. Examples include Rwandan singer-songwriter Jean-Paul Samputu, who lost his father and other family members in the genocide, and has used his music to promote forgiveness and reconciliation, and the Rwandan dance troupe Inganzo Ngari, which performs traditional dances as a way of promoting unity and social cohesion. How did the media coverage of the Rwandan genocide influence the international community's response, and what role did propaganda and misinformation play in the conflict? The media coverage of the Rwandan genocide had a significant impact on the international community's response, with many arguing that it played a role in the failure of the international community to intervene in a timely and effective manner. Here are some ways in which media coverage influenced the international response to the genocide. 1. Limited coverage. The Rwandan genocide received limited coverage in the international media, with many news outlets focusing instead on the crisis in Bosnia. This limited coverage contributed to a lack of awareness among the international community of the scale and severity of the conflict. 2. Stereotypes and biases. When the genocide was covered, it was often framed in terms of ethnic conflict and tribal violence, rather than as a political and social crisis. This framing reinforced stereotypes and biases about Africa and its conflicts, and may have contributed to a lack of urgency among policymakers and the international community. 3. Delayed reporting. Many journalists and media outlets were slow to report on the genocide, and some even downplayed or denied the scale of the violence. This delayed reporting may have contributed to a sense of complacency among the international community and a failure to recognize the urgency of the situation. 4. Propaganda and misinformation. Propaganda and misinformation played a significant role in fueling the violence and exacerbating tensions between Hutu and Tutsi communities. Extremist media outlets disseminated hate speech and incitement to violence, contributing to the climate of fear and mistrust that characterized the conflict. What were the long-term political and social effects of the Rwandan genocide, and how have they impacted the country and the region as a whole? The Rwandan genocide had profound and long-lasting political and social effects, both in Rwanda and in the wider region. Here are some ways in which the genocide has impacted the country and the region. 1. Political effects. The genocide led to a major shift in political power in Rwanda, with the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, emerging as the dominant political force in the country. This shift has led to significant changes in political institutions and policies, including a focus on economic development, security, and social cohesion. 2. Social effects. The genocide had a devastating impact on Rwandan society, with hundreds of thousands of people killed and many more traumatized by the violence. The legacy of the genocide can still be felt in Rwanda today, with ongoing efforts focused on promoting healing, reconciliation, and social cohesion. 3. Regional effects. The genocide also had regional effects, with neighboring countries such as Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, experiencing spillover effects from the conflict. The genocide also had a profound impact on the Great Lakes region of Africa, contributing to ongoing conflicts and instability in the region. 4. International effects. The genocide brought international attention to the issue of genocide and mass atrocities, leading to significant developments in international law and the establishment of institutions such as the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. The genocide also had a significant impact on international relations, with some countries and international organizations criticized for their failure to intervene in the conflict. How did the Rwandan genocide impact global discussions about human rights, genocide prevention, and international intervention in conflicts? The Rwandan genocide had a significant impact on global discussions about human rights, genocide prevention, and international intervention in conflicts. Here are some of the ways in which the genocide influenced these discussions. 1. Human rights. The genocide raised awareness of the importance of human rights and the need to protect vulnerable populations from mass atrocities. It highlighted the devastating impact of hate speech and incitement to violence, and underscored the importance of promoting tolerance, understanding, and respect for diversity. 2. Genocide prevention. The genocide underscored the need for stronger international action to prevent genocide and mass atrocities, including early warning systems, effective diplomatic engagement, and robust peacekeeping and humanitarian responses. The importance of addressing root causes of conflict, such as poverty, inequality, and political instability, was also emphasized. 3. International intervention. The genocide raised questions about the role and responsibility of the international community in responding to mass atrocities. It highlighted the challenges and limitations of international intervention, as well as the consequences of inaction. The importance of timely, effective, and coordinated responses to conflict and mass atrocities was also emphasized. 4. Development of international law. The genocide contributed to the development of international law, particularly with regard to the definition and prosecution of genocide as a crime under international law. The establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and the International Criminal Court also represented significant developments in the field of international criminal justice. How did different countries and organizations support or enable the violence of the Rwandan genocide, and what accountability measures have been taken to address these issues? Different countries and organizations played various roles in supporting or enabling the violence of the Rwandan genocide. Here are some examples. 1. France. France has been accused of supporting the Hutu-led government and providing military aid during the genocide. Some critics argue that this support was motivated by French economic and strategic interests in the region. In 2019, a French report acknowledged that France bears overwhelming responsibilities for the genocide, although it stopped short of acknowledging complicity. 2. Belgium. Belgium has been criticized for its role in the colonization and politicization of ethnic identities in Rwanda, which contributed to the polarization and tensions that led to the genocide. Belgian peacekeepers also withdrew from Rwanda at the start of the genocide, which some argue contributed to the escalation of the violence. 3. United Nations. The United Nations was criticized for its failure to prevent or intervene in the genocide, despite early warnings of the impending violence. The UN peacekeeping mission in Rwanda, UNAMIR, was severely under-resourced and ill-equipped to deal with the scale of the conflict. Some critics also argue that the UN Security Council was slow to respond to the crisis, and that the politics of the Cold War played a role in shaping international responses. 4. Private companies. Private companies, including weapons manufacturers and mining companies, have been accused of contributing to the violence and instability in Rwanda by providing military equipment or exploiting natural resources in the region. In terms of accountability measures, efforts have been made to address the role of different countries and organizations in the genocide. For example, 1. International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda was established by the United Nations to prosecute individuals responsible for the genocide. The tribunal has indicted and convicted dozens of individuals, including high-ranking government officials and military leaders. 2. Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. Some countries, including Rwanda and South Africa, have established Truth and Reconciliation Commissions to address the legacies of violence and conflict in their societies. These commissions aim to promote accountability, justice, and healing, and to foster social cohesion and reconciliation. 3. Civil lawsuits. Survivors of the genocide and their families have brought civil lawsuits against private companies and individuals implicated in the conflict. These lawsuits aim to hold those responsible for the violence accountable, and to seek compensation for the harm caused.